Welcome to the SQL injection vulnerability exploitation. In this lesson, I am going to exploit a target web applications with the help of SQL map tool. In the vulnerability assessment section of web applications, we have already seen there are a lot more vulnerabilities was found with the help of web applications scanners and the vulnerability assessment tools. So now it's time to exploit that vulnerability. So in this case, I am going to exploit the SQL injection vulnerability. So at first I will confirm that web applications if it is really vulnerable or not. So just start browsing the web applications. In this case the target is was BWA, broken web applications and the total vulnerable virtual machines. So simply I will browse and let's see if there is vulnerability found or not. Move to the OS bricks, content page, content 1. Well, in this page I will try to figure out if this page is vulnerable or not. So what we see here is the ID parameter that we can play with and try to figure out with the common SQL injection vulnerability tricks like passing the single quotes, double quotes, or simply conditional matching like 1 is equal to 1. So in this case I will simply put single quote and let's try to see if this throws any error or not. Well, this page throwing a warning. It is also revealing that the database on the target system is MySQL server. At this stage, confirm that the database behind this web application is the MySQL server. So now it's time to figure out and fire up the tool SQL map that is really a great and perfect tool to exploit the SQL injection vulnerability. Simply copy this URL and feed up with the SQL map. Start the SQL map tool. You can find more help about the SQL map and the commands associated with this tool. Simply type help and it will show all the details related to and the commands that it supports. If you want more helps in the detailed and the advanced options, put "H" and it will show you advanced options. So in this scenario, I will perform SQL injection exploitation on the target system and the URL that I just copied to find usernames, passwords, database names, information schemas, and if it is more, then I will also pound a shell. Let's start. SQL map, URL. By default options, it will try to figure out that what is the database on the target web applications. So if you know already the target database, you can provide DBMS switch like MySQL, or if you not provide, then it will first try to figure out what is the database behind the web applications. So I will go with the default and let's see what is the result. This have detected that DBMS is MySQL database and the ID parameter might be injectable. You can follow the instructions and the shell prompt. At first, simply try to figure out if the database is vulnerable to SQL injections or not. So in this case, it has found that the database on the target web applications is really vulnerable to SQL injections. So it is asking that get parameter ID is vulnerable. Do you want to keep testing the others? I will type yes. And at the last, the information that the backend DBMS is MySQL and all the operating systems related and the web applications technology like PHP, Apache versions, and the MySQL versioning has been also faced from the target database. And what the payload was generated and attacked with is this one. This is the default payload that the SQL map tool use. Now the next step is to find the database. I will use current user and it will try to find what is the database user by default. And the current database user is with the name of bricks. This have successfully exploited and passed the database and the current database user. Now the next step is to find the columns and the tables. Simply put the switch columns and it will try to figure out how many columns are on the database. There are a lot more columns. Database is the bricks. Table users. There are a total of 8 columns like email, host, ID users, language, name, password, reference, and UA. Now the next option and the next step is to find the table names. How many tables exist with the table switch. Here you can see a lot more tables and retrieved all the details from the database. Here you can see all the tables that have been found from the database and successfully retrieved from the details. And the database name, here you can see there is Joomla, no apps, and all the details. Now the next steps that every hacker wants to get and retrieve from the database is usernames and also the passwords. So this is the steps in which I will perform to retrieve the users with the usernames and the passwords. Now simply replace the switch with the users and it will try to figure out how many users are there. Here you can see the list of users on the database on the target view applications. Now the next step, very crucial step, is to find the passwords associated with that usernames, and this tool also supports cracking that passwords because the passwords are stored in the hash format. So you need to crack with the dictionary file, change the switch with the passwords and also place users so that it will pass users names and the passwords associated with that. Do you want to store hashes to a temporary file for eventual further processing with other tools? It is asking to store the hashes. I will simply type yes. And now it have retrieved all the usernames and the passwords associated with. And now it is asking to crack them. If you are agree, then it will perform a dictionary based password cracking with that hashes. I will start crack that hashes to get the passwords. I will type Y, that is yes. To start the dictionary file located in the word list.zip inside the SQL map folder, that is the default option, simply press the enter and it will start cracking. Here you can see there is a current status that is trying to figure out and cracking all the hashes found in the database with the usernames. So overall this tool is really a helpful tool successfully exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities. I strongly recommend you to use this tool SQL map and explore all the switches to get more detailed and what you can do with this tool and also to practice your knowledge deeply. This time it have cracked passwords. Similarly, it will also crack all these passwords that was stored in hash format in the database. So this was the last steps by which we can get all the usernames and the passwords associated with them. It has successfully cracked a lot more passwords. Now if you have got the usernames and the passwords associated with, you can just directly log into the database management systems. Now we have successfully exploited the SQL injection vulnerabilities and faced all the details and the passwords and everything that is related with the SQL injection attacks. Now if you want, you can perform also the meter-predator shell back to your computer system and also the shell prompt from the database management system to extend your attack further. As much you will practice using this tool SQL map, you will be more fluent at exploitation of SQL injection vulnerabilities. There are no limitations of this tool. You can perform a lot more options apart from all these commands and the tools. Thank you.